Ladies, I want you to listen to this very carefully, because there's one moment that can define everything. One moment where the entire dynamic between you and him shifts. That moment when he contacts you after disappearing, pulling back, or breaking your heart. Let me paint a familiar scene for you. You're going about your day, maybe you're working, maybe you're with friends, maybe you're finally starting to feel a little stronger again, and ding, that name. His name. Suddenly, everything in you halts. Your heart starts racing, your mind floods with emotion, and all those old memories come rushing back like a wave you didn't ask for. He's reached out, and now you're staring at your phone like it holds all the answers. You're thinking, what do I say? Or, more dangerously, should I say anything at all? This moment, this split second when your heart is louder than your head, is where so many people make a decision that pulls them right back into a cycle they promised themselves they were done with. Why? And because the emotional gravity of being contacted by someone you once cared deeply for, someone you maybe still care about, is massive. It's tempting. It tugs at the most vulnerable parts of you, the part that wants closure, the part that wants to feel chosen, the part that's still against all logic hopes. But here's where your power lies. Not in what you text back, not in how quickly you respond, not in crafting the perfect cool but not too cool reply. Your power lies in the pause. That moment before you act, that's the moment that defines everything. Because here's the truth, responding out of impulse usually comes from emotion, not clarity. And when you're emotional, you're more likely to act from fear of losing him again, fear of missing out on a second chance, fear that staying silent means missing something important. But here's the question you have to ask yourself. Is this moment about him, or is it about you? When someone reaches out after pulling away, ghosting, or disappearing without explanation, it's very easy to interpret that message as proof of change. But a message isn't proof of transformation. A "hey stranger" text isn't an apology. A "miss you" isn't accountability. A heart emoji is not a plan to be better. The pause gives you space to reconnect with your truth. What was it you felt when he disappeared? What did you learn in the silence? What were the promises you made to yourself in those moments of pain when you were up at 2 a.m. wondering what you did wrong, when you were replaying conversations trying to make sense of his distance? That version of you, the one who cried, questioned, and survived, deserves to have a say before you let any part of him back in. Taking a pause is not cold, it's not calculated, it's clarity. You get to step outside the emotional whirlwind and ask the deeper questions. What does this message really mean? Is he reaching out because he misses me? Or because he's bored, lonely, or just wants to see if I'll still respond? Has anything actually changed since the last time? The pause puts you back in control of the conversation. It allows you to respond with intention instead of reaction. You're no longer chasing the moment. You're choosing whether it's even worth engaging with. And maybe, just maybe, you'll decide that it's not. Maybe you'll see that responding just reopens wounds that have started to heal, that chasing the spark from a broken flame isn't love, it's habit, that sometimes silence is stronger than any text you could send. But even if you do decide to respond, that pause still changes everything, because you'll go in clear, you'll go in grounded, you'll go in remembering the pain and the lessons and the promises you made to yourself, not as the person who was left, but as the person who stood back up. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to not know what to do immediately. You are allowed to sit with your feelings before you act on them. Don't rush to make him feel comfortable when he's the one who made things complicated. Don't be so quick to open a door just because someone knocked. Not everyone who reappears deserves a re-entry. People will often say, well, I just didn't want to be rude. I wanted to be polite. But being polite doesn't mean betraying yourself. It doesn't mean prioritizing someone else's comfort over your own peace, especially not someone who didn't prioritize you when it mattered most. So the next time he contacts you, before your fingers start typing a response, before your mind starts spinning a new story, just breathe. Pause and ask yourself, what do I actually want right now? Not what I hope he wants, not what I wish would happen, but me, right now, based on everything I know, based on everything I've been through. That moment of stillness, that's your compass. That's your strength. The moment you stop reacting, you start reclaiming your power. Have you ever had that feeling in your stomach that something just wasn't right, but you kept going anyway? Maybe it was during a conversation where his words sounded sweet, but his tone was off. Maybe it was when he started pulling away, but he said he was just busy. Maybe it was when you were lying next to him, close in distance, but feeling miles away emotionally. That feeling, that quiet, uncomfortable twist inside you, that's not just anxiety, that's not paranoia, that's your gut instinct speaking. And I want to tell you something that might sound simple, but it's powerful. Your gut is rarely wrong. It's not dramatic, it's not needy, it's not being overly sensitive. It's wise, it's experienced, it's trying to protect you from pain you felt before. But what happens time and time again is we override it, we reason with it, we tell ourselves stories to drown it out. He's just tired, maybe I'm overthinking, it's probably just me. And we silence that voice, our voice, because it's inconvenient to listen to, because it gets in the way of the fantasy we've started building. You see, the gut doesn't care about the fantasy. It doesn't care about the butterflies. It doesn't care how good he looked the last time you saw him or how much chemistry you had on that one magical night. It only cares about patterns, about signals, about energy that doesn't match the words being spoken. But instead of listening, we rationalize. We turn red flags into yellow ones. We reinterpret silence as giving space. We call inconsistency confusion instead of what it is, emotional unavailability. And deep down, you know the truth. You knew when his replies got slower. You knew when the effort dropped off. You knew when he started making you feel like a backup plan instead of a priority. You felt the shift, but you wanted to believe that it would pass, that he'd snap out of it, that if you were patient or understanding or low maintenance enough, he'd realize you were worth showing up for. That voice in your gut, it was there all along, whispering, nudging, trying to keep you from walking straight into another heartbreak. So now, when he reaches out again, after time, after distance, after silence, here's what I need you to do. Don't ignore your gut this time. Ask yourself, what is it telling me right now? Not what I wish it would say, not what I want him to prove, but what is it already saying? Is your gut saying, this feels like a pattern? Is it saying, I've seen this version of him before? Is it saying, he's not here because he changed? He's here because he's curious if you're still available. See, when someone comes back, the danger isn't in what they say, it's in what you want to hear. Your gut doesn't care about their words. It listens for consistency. It watches for integrity. It sees beyond the charm and straight into the intention behind it. And most of all, your gut remembers. It remembers the nights you cried after he disappeared. It remembers the confusion, the anxiety, the self-doubt. And it wants to make sure you don't forget all that in a split second of emotional nostalgia. When you ignore your gut, you're not just ignoring logic, you're abandoning the most emotionally intelligent part of yourself, the part that feels what's real, even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts. And I know this, ignoring your gut never ends with peace. It ends with regret because you saw it, you felt it, and you still let yourself be led by hope instead of truth. But listening to your gut, that's self-respect in action. That's choosing long-term peace over short-term comfort. That's refusing to re-enter a cycle that already proved it can't give you what you need. And if your gut ends up being wrong, if you take a step back and realize that maybe this time is different, that's okay too. Because pausing to listen doesn't mean shutting the door completely. It just means you're not letting someone else's reappearance override your own healing. Listening doesn't mean acting with anger. It means acting with wisdom. So the next time you get that message, that call, that I've been thinking about you out of nowhere, check in. Not with your friends, not with your phone, but with you, with the part of you that always knew, the part that felt the imbalance, the part that questioned the way you were being treated, the part that said, this doesn't feel right. That part is trying to lead you to something better, to someone who doesn't lead you guessing, who doesn't disappear when things get real, who doesn't come back only when it's convenient. The more you listen to your gut, the louder it gets, the stronger you become, and the less you rely on the illusion of someone's potential to feel whole. You don't need proof to trust your instincts. You are the proof. Your experiences, your growth, your pain, your power. Your gut isn't trying to take away love. It's trying to protect your heart until the right one comes along. And that's worth listening to. And it's a quiet night and your phone lights up. A message. His name. Maybe it's been days, maybe it's been weeks, maybe months have passed since you last heard from him. But here he is, back. Just like that. Your heart leaps before your mind can even catch up. You stare at the screen and the thoughts come rushing in. He's thinking about me. I must miss me. Maybe he realized he made a mistake. It's almost automatic. That message hits your phone and your brain starts building a story, a romantic one, a hopeful one. And before you know it, you're thinking, this must mean something. But let's slow this moment down, because here's where most people go wrong. They confuse contact with commitment. Just because someone reaches out doesn't mean they're ready to step up. Just because he says, I miss you, doesn't mean he's ready to give you what you actually deserve. A text isn't a plan. A call isn't a change of heart. A like on your story, that's not love. Anyone can contact you. That part's easy. That part costs nothing. But commitment, that costs something. That takes courage. That takes effort. It means consistency, not convenience. And that's the difference. So many people get drawn back into the same cycle again and again because they assign too much meaning to a message. They see it as a turning point, as redemption, as a sign from the universe that maybe, just maybe, this is their second chance. But in reality, most of the time, that message is just a breadcrumb, a test. And are you still there? Disguised as a grand gesture. The danger isn't in hearing from him, it's in what you assume it means. Contact says, I thought of you. Commitment says, I'm ready to show up for you. Big difference. And here's where it gets tricky, because contact feels like commitment in the moment, especially if you've been missing him, especially if you've been secretly hoping he'd come back. It scratches an itch. It soothes the part of you that was questioning your worth. It gives a temporary high that feels like validation. I matter to him. I still do. But that feeling fades fast, doesn't it? Because what usually follows that message? A conversation that goes nowhere, a few sweet words and vague compliments, maybe some late night texts, maybe even plans that never actually happen. You get pulled in and then, just like before, he starts to fade again. And now you're back where you started, except this time it hurts even more because this time you let yourself believe. So how do you break that cycle? You start by recognizing this truth. Real commitment looks like action over time. It doesn't look like a 2 a.m. hey stranger message. It looks like someone taking accountability for how they left. It looks like someone explaining what changed and showing you, not just telling you. It looks like consistency, clarity, and courage, not curiosity. If he's just curious, let him be curious. That doesn't mean you need to open the door. That doesn't mean you have to reply. You're not obligated to entertain someone just because they suddenly remembered you exist. Your life isn't a waiting room for someone else's realization. You're not here to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it the first time. You're not here to keep your heart on standby, hoping one day it will be picked. When someone is serious about you, they don't just reach out, they follow through. They communicate with intent. They want to rebuild trust, not just flirt with your emotions. So the next time you get that message, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this person showing me commitment or just contact? Is this an opening to a conversation or an invitation to the same pattern? Is he stepping up or just checking it? Because if someone truly wants to be in your life, they'll make it clear. You won't have to analyze the message. You won't have to guess what it means. You won't be stuck in limbo, clinging to a maybe. You'll know. And until someone shows up in a way that aligns with the kind of love you want, you don't need to engage. You don't need to reply. And you don't need to carry the weight of a conversation that leads nowhere. You've done enough hoping. You've done enough waiting. You've done enough pretending a text was something it's not. Now it's time to honor your heart with something real. Because you don't just deserve contact. You deserve commitment. Let's talk about something that's subtle, but incredibly dangerous when it comes to love. It's the trap of falling in love with potential. You meet someone, the chemistry is there. He's charming, funny, and when he talks about the future, wow, it sounds beautiful. Maybe he says all the right things. Maybe he tells you he's never met anyone like you before. Maybe he even opens up about wanting more in life, about how he's working on himself. And you start imagining, you see what could be, not necessarily what is. You start believing that with a little time, a little patience, maybe even a little encouragement, he'll get there. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Potential is only ever as good as the actions that back it up. And too many people spend months, even years, waiting for someone to catch up to the version of them they imagine. They hang on, not because they're happy, but because they believe in who that person could become. They're not in love with the present, they're in love with the idea of the future. That's not love. That's a project. That's a bet you're placing with your heart. And it's based on hope, not evidence. Now, don't get me wrong, hope has its place. But when it comes to relationships, the smartest and most self-respecting thing you can do is stop hoping for someone to change and start paying attention to what they consistently do. Look at the pattern, not the potential. Does he show up when he says he will? Does he communicate clearly or only when it suits him? Does he follow through or is it all talk? Do his actions match the things he says? Because anyone can say, I want a real relationship, but does he act like a man who's ready for one? People reveal who they are through repetition. That's why patterns matter more than moments. A grand gesture once in a while doesn't make a good partner. A deep conversation at 2 a.m. doesn't mean emotional maturity. A couple of dates filled with laughs and chemistry don't mean long-term compatibility. Consistency is the real chemistry. Emotional availability is the real attraction. You want someone whose effort is steady, not someone who spikes your adrenaline once a month and then disappears into thin air. And I get it, it's hard to let go of someone when you've built a beautiful future in your mind. But ask yourself, how much of what I'm holding on to is based on what's actually happening? And how much is based on what I hope might happen one day? One of the most freeing things you can do is accept that someone can have potential and still not be right for you. Maybe he's kind, but inconsistent. Maybe he means well, but he's emotionally unavailable. Maybe he cares about you, but he's not ready to give you what you're looking for. That doesn't make him a villain, but it does make him wrong for where you're headed. Because love isn't about seeing the best in someone. It's about aligning with someone who's ready to be the best with you. You need someone whose present reality is already compatible with your standards, not someone who might meet them one day if the stars align and the timing works out and they decide to grow up. Beth Corcox, here's a mindset shift that can change everything. Don't ask, what could he become? Ask, if nothing ever changed from this moment forward, if this is who he is right now, would I still choose this? If the answer is no, then you're not in love with the person, you're in love with their potential. And that's a dangerous place to build your life from. You deserve a relationship where you feel safe, seen, and secure, not one where you're constantly waiting for someone to become the person you need them to be. You shouldn't have to teach someone how to treat you, or beg for consistency, or hold space for potential that never becomes reality. The right person won't require you to gamble. They'll make you feel grounded, not confused, certain, not anxious. You won't be left hoping they'll change because you'll already be getting the real, consistent version of them, not the highlight reel they show you when they feel like it. So when he contacts you again, don't just listen to what he says in the moment. Watch the pattern that follows. Does it match what he told you? Does it align with your values? Or is it the same old story with a new wrapper? Your standards aren't there to intimidate the wrong person. They're there to attract the right one. Stop romanticizing what could be. Start honoring what is. Because what is, that pattern you see, those actions you feel, that's the truth. Everything else, that's just noise. You've done enough hoping. Now it's time to believe in you. Let's talk about a dynamic in dating that most people don't even realize they're creating. Someone disappears for days, maybe weeks, maybe longer, no explanation, no communication. You're left feeling confused, hurt, wondering what you did wrong. And then suddenly they're back. A hey stranger text, a comment on your post, a message out of nowhere that feels like a little lifeline tossed into your emotional ocean. And what do? You respond. You light up, you re-engage, you're polite, maybe even flirty. You tell yourself, I'll just see where this goes. But deep down, you're hoping this time it's different, that maybe now he's realized something, maybe he's changed. But here's the thing no one tells you. Every time you respond warmly to bad behavior, you're rewarding it. You're reinforcing a message, whether you mean to or not. You can disappear, go cold, ignore me, and I'll still be here, smiling when you come back. It's not that you're weak. It's not that you're needy. It's that you haven't yet realized the power of the standard you're setting. People are always paying attention to what they can get away with, not necessarily consciously, but through experience. And the moment someone sees that you'll tolerate inconsistency, that you'll still entertain them after disrespect, they file that away. And it becomes part of how they treat you. It doesn't mean they're malicious, but it does mean they're learning the rules of engagement from you. That's why it's so important to be aware of the behaviors you reward, because relationships are not just about attraction. They're about training. Yes, training, not in a manipulative way, but in the most honest sense of the word. We teach people how to treat us by what we allow, what we reinforce, and what we let slide. Think about it. If a guy disappears for a week with no explanation, and you greet his return with warmth, a laugh, maybe even a little flirtation, he doesn't walk away thinking, wow, I better not do that again. He walks away thinking, I guess that wasn't a big deal. And now you've normalized that behavior in the relationship, not because you asked for it, but because you didn't call it out, because you didn't set a new boundary, because your response gave him a green light. Boundaries aren't just about what you say, they're about what you do when they're tested. So the next time someone reaches out after ghosting, ask yourself, what message do I want to send with my response? Do I want to signal that I have standards, or do I want to soothe my anxiety in the moment and deal with the fallout later? Because here's what happens when you start honoring your standards. The wrong people get filtered out fast. When someone comes back after being inconsistent and you don't give them the same energy you used to, when you reply with distance, with clarity, or sometimes not at all, they feel the shift. They realize they no longer have easy access to you. And that forces them to make a choice. They either rise to your standard or they disappear for good. Either way, you win, because you're not wasting your time in limbo. You're not reteaching someone how to value you. You're not repeating the same emotional lesson over and over again. You're saying, I'm not rewarding low effort anymore. I'm not making it easy to come and go in my life. I'm not here to stroke your ego when it's convenient for you. And that changes everything. The most powerful shift in dating is when you stop trying to get someone to choose you and start asking yourself whether their behavior even deserves your attention. Because anyone can reach out. Anyone can say they miss you. Anyone can drop in with a little spark and stir up your emotions. But it takes maturity, consistency, and real respect to come back with intention, to acknowledge their absence, to apologize for their behavior, and to make a genuine effort to earn trust again. That's the only return that deserves your time. Anything less, that's just noise. As the more you respond to it, the more you invite it in. You're not cold for having standards. You're not rude for expecting follow through. You're not too much for wanting something real. You're just tired of rewarding inconsistency with access. And when you stop doing that, when you stop handing out second chances like candy to people who haven't done the work, you free up space for something better. Not perfect, not magical, just consistent, grounded, real. So the next time he reaches out after going quiet, don't just ask if he means it. Ask what you want to mean to yourself. Ask what behavior you want to reinforce in your life. Ask whether this is someone who's shown you love or just someone who's chasing attention. Because you're not here to teach someone they can always come back. You're here to teach them that if they want you, they have to show up and stay. And that is how you stop rewarding the wrong things and start attracting the right ones. There's a difference between being open-hearted and being wide open. When someone reaches out after a period of silence or after things ended on unclear terms, you might feel torn. Part of you wants to slam the door in their face. The other part, the part that still feels something, wants to listen, wants to believe, wants to leave just enough space for the possibility that they've changed. And you know what? That instinct isn't wrong. Being open to growth, forgiveness, and even reconciliation can be a strength. It shows maturity. It shows you're not bitter. It shows you're capable of looking at the full picture, not just the painful parts. But being open doesn't mean being available for anything. It doesn't mean handing over instant access to someone just because they suddenly decided they want it again. It doesn't mean dropping your standards the moment they say they're sorry or letting them skip the part where they prove themselves. That's why I say hold the door, but don't leave it wide open. What does that mean? It means you don't need to go to extremes. You don't need to block him on every platform the second he texts. You also don't need to throw your arms around him like no time has passed. You can be measured. You can be composed. You can say, I'm listening, without saying, I'm yours. Because your time, your energy, your heart, those are not automatic privileges. They're earned. They're invited and they're protected. You're not shutting down the possibility that someone has grown, but you're also not giving them the benefit of the doubt for free. You're letting their actions speak before their words have any real weight. So often people confuse access with love. They think that keeping the door open means you're weak. It doesn't. It means you're secure enough to stay calm in the face of emotion, but wise enough not to be manipulated by it. See, when you leave the door wide open, anyone can walk in. And often the ones who walk in first aren't the ones who should be there. They're the ones looking for a quick ego boost. They're the ones who want to see if they can still get your attention. The ones who don't want to do the work, but want to know you're still there if they ever get around to it. That's not love. That's access abuse. That's someone seeing how much they can take without giving. Holding the door means you're not ruled by resentment, but you're not naive either. You can say, I'm open to seeing what's different, but I'm not going to assume anything is different until I actually see it. You can say, I care about you, but that doesn't mean I'm handing you the same place in my life that you used to have. You can say, I don't hate you, but I'm not going to rush to forgive what hasn't been acknowledged or repaired, because people often want the comfort of being forgiven without the discomfort of accountability. And here's the truth. If someone genuinely wants another chance with you, they won't be scared of your boundaries. They won't need the door to be wide open. They'll expect it to be just slightly cracked. They'll be ready to knock. They'll be prepared to explain why they're there and what's going to be different this time. And if they're not, then you just saved yourself a repeat heartbreak. You don't need to shut everyone out forever. That's not strength. That's self-protection in the form of isolation. But real strength, it's being able to face someone who once hurt you and say, I'm not angry, but I'm also not available on the same terms anymore. That's power. It's knowing that forgiveness doesn't mean reinstatement, that love doesn't have to mean re-entry, that being open to a conversation doesn't mean welcoming someone back into your life like nothing ever happened. You're allowed to say, the version of you who left isn't welcome anymore. If there's a new version, let's see who that is. But I'm not handing over my heart to someone just because they remembered how to use a phone. And this is where so many people struggle. They confuse politeness with permission. They confuse empathy with invitation. You can be kind without being a doormat. You can be understanding without being available. You can be open to growth without making yourself vulnerable to the same old pattern. So when he contacts you again, take a breath, look at who's knocking on the door, ask yourself, is he knocking because he sees me or because he's lonely? Because he respects me or because he needs something? You don't owe anyone instant trust just because they circle back. You owe yourself the protection of your peace. Hold the door if you want to, but keep your hand on the handle. Because love may be about connection, but your standards, that's about self-respect. And if someone really wants to be in your life again, they won't mind earning it this time.